Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So of course, we have to start with the new WWE Champion himself. Yes, Big E revealed last night his intentions to cash in his Money in the Bank contract and leave Monday Night Raw as the WWE Champion. And that's exactly what he did, because the almighty WWE Championship reign of Bobby Lashley has indeed come to an end. And we have a new WWE Champion, that being the New Day member known as Big E. Big E has won his first WWE Championship. He did so last night on Monday Night Raw. Big E is your new WWE Champion. Now, last night's edition of Monday Night Raw from Boston saw Bobby Lashley retain his WWE Championship over Raw Tag Team Champion Randy Orton in the main event of the show. But after the match, Big E cashed in his Money in the Bank contract and defeated Lashley in a match that did indeed go several minutes. Now, of course, this is Big E's first run with the WWE Championship. Lashley held the championship for 195 days. Of course, he won the title from The Miz on the March 1st edition of Monday Night Raw. Now, there's a lot of information when it comes to this big championship victory, this big championship end to Monday Night Raw last night. And WWE reportedly changed plans for Big E's WWE Championship victory. Now, as I mentioned, last night's edition of Raw from Boston saw Big E capture the WWE Championship from Bobby Lashley. The SmackDown star cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase right after Lashley retained his title over Randy Orton in the main event. But in an update, Andrew Zarian of the MatMan podcast is reporting that the WWE title change was initially planned for the original draft date for Monday Night Raw. Now, we'll touch on this later on in the video, but WWE confirmed on last night's edition of Raw that the 2021 WWE Draft will begin with the October 1st edition of SmackDown from the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore, Maryland, and then wrap up with the October 4th edition of Monday Night Raw from Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, Big E returning to Raw means that the New Day has reunited and are once again on the same brand. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods appeared in a backstage segment with Big E on Monday Night Raw last night, and then, of course, celebrated with Big E as the show went off the air. The group has been apart since the 2020 WWE Draft, only making special appearances together on the likes of big pay-per-views like Survivor Series or WrestleMania, etc. It's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens now moving forward with the New Day in the 2021 Draft. Are they going to be on the same brand once again, presumably Raw, or are they going to be split up again with Big E being on Raw and the New Day possibly being on SmackDown? That's certainly interesting. It's interesting, of course, that the title change was initially planned for the draft. WWE likes to view the draft as like the end of a season, and they always have. They've had it the last couple of years. They had it going back to sort of 2019 when SmackDown first debuted on Fox, and Raw, you had what they like to call it a season premiere, right? It's a season premiere of WWE, like there is an end of any season. It's just one continuous thing. If anything, the new season of WWE is right after WrestleMania, in my opinion. The season finale is WrestleMania, and then the season premiere is the episodes of Raw and SmackDown after WrestleMania, but whatever. For the last couple of years, around October, they like to have the draft, and then after the draft, they'll go, it's the season premiere of SmackDown, or it's the season premiere of Monday Night Raw, and then you've got your new rosters, and they go from there. So it's interesting that obviously they had plans. WWE has known. They're not dumb. They're not dumb here. While SmackDown has actually been relatively successful right now, and we'll talk about the SmackDown ratings in a second, whilst SmackDown is quite successful at the moment, and the ratings are fairly strong, Monday Night Raw, we know, is a creatively bankrupt brand, and WWE isn't completely unaware of this. It's not a case of they're just completely in denial. Go, oh, Raw's fine. They know there's issues. They know there's massive problems with Monday Night Raw. So they had these things planned. They had Big E's WWE Championship reign planned, or Championship switch planned, and they thought, right, if we hype it up as an episode of the draft, we know people will watch the draft. So there'll be people that are tuning in then. That's like the season premiere or the season finale, whatever it may be. We can have Big E win the championship then, and then we kick off, and the new version of Monday Night Raw with Big E as its champion is for the remainder of the year heading into 2022. I think that was the plan. I think a lot of things then changed that, forced their hand. I think they saw, obviously, what happened with Dynamite last Wednesday and went, wait a minute. Now, in terms of the key demo, we've lost. We don't know if that's going to happen every single week, but if it is going to start happening every single week, we've got to do something different. Plus, of course, Monday Night Football returned last night, so they thought, you know what? We had planned on doing this title change a couple of weeks in advance, but let's move it up. Let's move it up and let's do it now. And I think when the ratings come out tonight, they'll probably be they'll probably find out it was probably the right decision to do from a ratings point of view, obviously. Now, obviously, social media is still widely celebrating Big E's championship victory. WWE has even changed their official Twitter account, the name of the account, to Big E is WWE Champion. Now, Lashley was evidently hobbled after defeating Randy Orton in the main event to retain his title. Following the match, Lashley sent Orton through the announce table and then sold a knee injury. So I think they're going to play that up, aren't they? They did. In fairness, when it comes to Lashley, look, we know how Lashley has been booked as WWE Champion. He's been booked very strong even without being WWE Champion for the past, like 12 months or something like that. And I think they did their best way possible to protect Bobby Lashley in loss here. I think at Extreme Rules, it will probably most likely be Lashley versus Big E once again. I think it does open the door, obviously, that we know we're getting Goldberg versus Lashley 2 at Crown Jewel. Now it doesn't have to be for the WWE Championship, that can only be a good thing. The issue there is that Goldberg's going to win, unfortunately, because they wanted to get the title off him because they thought, how can we have Goldberg win that match and not become WWE Champion? Their way of going around it is, we'll just take the belt off Lashley. But I think the plan was to get the belt on Big E anyway, so it's not too much of a drama. But I don't want to see Lashley putting over Goldberg anyway, because Goldberg's going to disappear once again. Even though he's going to come back and redeem Sunberg for being put in the Hurt Lock, he's still going to disappear after he beats Bobby Lashley at Crown Jewel, which is a problem. But that's a problem for another time. Obviously, like most people on social media and like most people within the pro wrestling industry, I'm very, very happy for Big E. I'm happy to see them finally put the title on him. I'm happy to see them finally run with this man that we know. And you can watch a Big E match or you can watch a Big E promo or anything like that. You know that this guy, he has it. He absolutely has it. What's surprising to me is that there is still a group of people on social media, you see them in comments, that are still like, this guy's too comedic, he doesn't take things seriously enough and all this kind of stuff, which I just don't agree with at this point. I really don't agree with. We've seen he can take things seriously. We've seen that. I think the only issue that WWE has right now when it comes to Big E is that the way Big E has been booked in the last... really since WrestleMania has not been the best booking of Big E. When they split Big E up from the New Day last year in the draft, between then and WrestleMania, they actually booked him very well. Had him win the Intercontinental Championship, had great matches against the likes of Sami Zayn. He had a good feud with Sheamus briefly on SmackDown as well. That was before Sheamus, of course, was drafted to Raw. But he was having good matches, good physical matches. And then he lost to Apollo Crews, and then he was just in this sort of weird wilderness, wasn't he? Because obviously he lost the title and then kept losing to Apollo Crews. Then he had the aborted feud with Aleister Black, where he got kicked in the head one week and then just disappeared because Aleister Black got released, which was a problem. And because of that booking, he has been on the colder side, shall we say, the last few months. But I don't think that matters because obviously the crowd is there and the desire is there so badly to see him win the WWE Championship that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter how bad the booking has been recently of Big E. So like everyone else, I'm just so happy and I'm so glad to see him finally get that opportunity that he deserves. He absolutely deserves. And we criticize WWE over and over and over again of going back to using old stars. It's humorous, isn't it, that they say at the moment they're going on a bit of a youth movement and they're moving towards younger stars and all this kind of stuff, when in reality you look at their roster, it's filled with stars that are aging, and they still, even to this day, even though they can't go back to the Undertakers and the Shawn Michaels and the Triple H's, etc., they still, even today, go back and rely on, okay, can we get Goldberg back? Can we get so-and-so back? Because they're desperate and they don't have those stars. I credit WWE for going, you know what, Big E can be a WWE champion. Let's give him the ball. Let's give him the ball and let's see if he can run with it. There still obviously are concerns that WWE just doesn't know how to book a top babyface champion. They don't. The evidence is there. Whether it's Drew McIntyre, whether it's Seth Rollins, whether it's Roman Reigns, throughout the years, in 6 months' time, if you can still get the crowd, the majority of the crowd and social media to be behind Big E and want to see him succeed as WWE Champion, then they would have done something that they haven't been able to do, because they just haven't been able to do that. Eventually, they had the crowd almost turn on Drew McIntyre. Eventually, they had the crowd turn on Seth Rollins, so much so that they had to turn him heel. He's been a heel ever since. So I still think there are massive issues that they have to reassess when it comes to how they book Big E going forward, but this is obviously the right move. Raw at this moment is the B show, but it's the perfect show for him to be the WWE Champion, to be established as a main event level talent. There are feuds on Monday Night Raw that I am interested in seeing him work, even if it's against Bobby Lashley, if it's against Drew McIntyre, who will now enter the WWE title picture once again because Lashley isn't the champion, whether it's against a Randy Orton or whoever. Damian Priest, there are feuds here that we haven't seen before and programs that we haven't seen before with these kind of stakes. That's interesting, and that's what Raw doesn't have and hasn't had for a while, just this feeling of freshness. Something different, something new, something fresh. We haven't seen that for a long, long time on Monday Night Raw. So I think that's the most exciting thing about Big E is, did they create a new star last night? I don't know. Time will tell about that, because we have seen stars over the course of the last few years get a WWE title opportunity, then afterwards it didn't work out. They go back down to the mid-card, Jinder Mahal. I'm not saying Big E is going to be a Jinder Mahal by any stretch of the imagination, but the hard work has only just begun, shall we say. But I think if anyone could pull it off, I really do think it's Big E. So I'm really excited for him. It was a massive moment, and hopefully it's just the beginning of what is a really successful WWE Championship reign for the New Day star. Let's talk about NXT. Of course, tonight is the revamped version of NXT, NXT Revamp, NXT 2.0, whatever they're calling it. But a top NXT star's contract is reportedly set to expire soon. Now, it was noted previously how Kevin Owens will see his WWE contract expire on Monday, January 31st, 2022, while Sami Zayn's contract will also expire with the WWE before the end of the year. Now you can add Johnny Gargano to the list of veteran WWE superstars who have contracts coming up, as Fightful Select, which of course is their Patreon service, be sure to check that out, is reporting that Gargano's deal is set to expire on Friday, December 3rd, so it is going to expire this year. Now, WWE and Gargano have not entered contract negotiations as of this week, but the word is that WWE officials expect to begin talks this coming fall. Now, it was noted that this situation isn't similar to Adam Cole or Pete Dunne, when the contracts expiring actually came to everyone as a bit of a surprise. Whilst Cole's contract expiring this summer came as a surprise, WWE officials originally thought Cole's deal would expire around the same time as Gargano, and they planned on speaking with them both ahead of that period, before the shocker that Cole's deal was actually expiring way earlier than that. Now, Gargano started working with WWE in 2015. He officially signed with the company in 2016 and has been involved in the Indy Hartwell Dexter Lumis storyline as of late, but recently indicated he wanted to get back in the NXT Championship picture once again. Now, this week's NXT episode will, of course, be a revamp for the brand. It will feature Tommaso Ciampa versus Kyle O'Reilly versus LA Knight versus Pete Dunne for the vacant NXT Championship. This, of course, after Samoa Joe vacated the title a couple of days ago. There's no word yet on what WWE has planned for Gargano's future after this revamp, or if a main roster call-up could be in his future. There's also no word on if Pete Dunne has signed a new contract, but it was reported in late August that he had been offered a new deal. When it comes to this one, I don't think this is as cut and dry as, say, like an Adam Cole, or even Adam Cole wasn't completely cut and dry, but he had left NXT by that point, and the writing really was on the wall, especially when the reports are they wanted him to be a manager on the main roster, which is laughable, absolutely laughable, to be honest with you. When it comes to Johnny Gargano, the guy is very committed to NXT. It doesn't look like he's going to be leaving NXT anytime soon, and that was the case for Adam Cole. I'm of the opinion that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens will both leave WWE at the end of their contracts, and they will both go to AEW. It suits them in AEW. They know people in AEW. I think it'll just be, frankly, they'll be happier in AEW than they are right now. They've done everything they can do in WWE. The same doesn't go with Johnny Gargano. Do I see Johnny Gargano going to the main roster? To be honest, no, I don't. Do I see him leaving NXT? No, I don't. I think that there was a report a couple of weeks ago, wasn't there? A report coming out a couple of weeks ago that he was going to become one of the top heels on NXT going forward. Does that happen if he doesn't sign a new contract? Probably not. But I would be really surprised, to be honest with you. I would be really, really, really surprised if Johnny Gargano went to AEW. Not to say that AEW wouldn't have interest. I just don't see how he would fit in there at this point. The roster is so big. And I don't think that's a problem with AEW. I think it's a good problem to have, frankly. But I think it's a different situation. I think it's a different situation than Adam Cole and his deal. And they have to have at least, whilst they're going with a different direction for NXT, and whilst they are going with a sort of a more youth-focused setup, and they are going with bigger guys and guys that don't have an indie background, you would think, well, Gargano doesn't fit into anything like that. they have to have at least a couple of experienced heads around, and I think Gargano is going to be one of them. So I would be really surprised, to be honest with you, really surprised if he did leave WWE and went to an AEW. Who's to say he would go to AEW? He might go somewhere else. He might go to a Ring of Honor. He might go to an Impact Wrestling. He might go to MLW. Who knows where he will go if he does leave WWE, but I would be really surprised. But look, Adam Cole was the guy in NXT. He had helped build that brand for the last 4 years. He was the centerpiece, and now he's in AEW. And this is an AEW that has Bryan Danielson and CM Punk in. Anything's possible at this point, so you really can't rule anything out. So who's to say? Who's to say he doesn't go? But I would just be really surprised. I'll be honest with you. I would be really, really surprised. I want to talk a bit about the SmackDown ratings. They came out, the confirmed final SmackDown ratings for last Friday's live WWE Super SmackDown from Madison Square Garden. And it drew an average of 2.383 million viewers on Fox, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. Now, this final number is up over 7% from the final overnight viewership that was released on Saturday morning, which, again, I don't really talk about anymore because the overnight viewerships are just so skewed at this point, especially with the return of football and all that kind of stuff. But the final number is up over 7% from last week's final SmackDown viewership of 2.220 million viewers. Friday SmackDown drew a 0.65 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic. This is up over 4%, nearly 5% from last week's 0.62 rating. The 0.65 rating represents 852,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demographic, which again is up over 5% from last week's 805,000 viewers in the 18 to 49 demo that the 0.62 rating drew. That's according to WrestleNomics. SmackDown ranked number 1 in the ratings for the key 18 to 49 demographic on network television for the 5th consecutive week. SmackDown also ranked number 1 in the 18 to 34 demo this week for the 5th week in a row also, and number 1 in the 25 to 54 demo for the 5th week in a row too. Now, SmackDown came in at number 5 for the night in terms of viewership on network television, but it's certainly very, very, very significant. SmackDown's Friday Super SmackDown was tied with the Go Home Royal Rumble episode for the best Blue Brand audience of the year. Super SmackDown was tied with the February 5th and May 7 episodes to draw the third best key demo rating of the year. As I mentioned, Friday's viewership was actually up from the previous week, and the key demo was also up from the previous week as well. SmackDown's viewership on Friday was up 2.32% from the same week in 2020, while Friday's 18 to 49 demographic was up over 8% from the same week in 2020 as well. Of course, it was in Madison Square Garden, featured the likes of Brock Lesnar's return, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair contract signing, Seth Rollins versus Edge, plus the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, the Usos, defending against the Street Profits in the main event. So, very successful. Look, the Super SmackDown episode from Madison Square Garden was very, very, very successful for WWE last week. Obviously did a record gate for any SmackDown show ever. Strong ratings, strong numbers, strong demographics. They'll be happy with that. WWE will be very, very, very happy with that. And like I said earlier on at the beginning of this video, SmackDown is not the issue at all right now. I think it's a good show. I think there have to be improvements on the show. I think the whole situation when it comes to nixing the women's match is a problem. It is a problem, but frankly, and this is going to seem really cold and callous, but I'm just saying I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think this is what WWE's perspective on it will be, is they won't care. They won't care because they'll look at the ratings and they'll look at the demos, and SmackDown's doing fine. SmackDown's doing very well, and that's not the problem. Raw is really the issue right now in terms of what an issue can be. But when you have a strong demographic, again, they've been number 1 in the demo and number 1 in terms of network television for the last 5 weeks. That's no mean feat. That really is no mean feat, especially on a Friday. And still, it's a difficult day to have television on, a successful television on. They're on Fox, so they should be doing good numbers, in my opinion. Just, they are good numbers, but still, they're on Fox. They should be doing good numbers. But look, they were at one point they were under 2 million, and it was a concern. Now for nearly 5 weeks in a row, something like that, they've been over 2 million for pretty much a while now. The last time they were under 2 million was all the way back in July. Since then, they've always been over 2 million, and again, they're on network television. They should be, but I think it's very successful, and they should be very happy with that, and they are very happy with that. So whatever they're doing on SmackDown is working. Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, Brock Lesnar, Becky Lynch. Make no mistake, it was a very strong show. SmackDown, and it should be delivering. But like I said, the issue is Raw, but you can't. People can criticize WWE for their storytelling and their booking and all that kind of stuff, but the numbers are there when it comes to SmackDown. Whatever they're doing on Friday nights is working. Whatever they're doing on Friday nights is going well. It's just a case of, like I said, I think Monday's the issue, but in terms of SmackDown, it's very successful at the moment. You have to give them credit for that. You do. Going back to Monday Night Raw, there was a botch last night. It was very messy, very, very messy. And there was an odd ending to the Nikki Ash versus Tamina Snuka match last night on Monday Night Raw. Now, during the closing stages of the match, Nikki Ash hit a tornado DDT and went for the cover, but Tamina kicked out just as the referee counted to 3. However, Tamina Snuka's music played, and the ring announcer declared her as the winner. Now, after the commercial break, the announcers corrected the mistake and acknowledged Nikki as the winner of the match. It was also announced that Nikki was being tended to by medical personnel. It appears that Tamina, I guess, was supposed to win the match, but an audible was called due to Nikki possibly getting injured. Fortunately, Nikki was present ringside during the Rhea Ripley-Natalya match, which was held immediately after her match with Tamina. This would indicate that Nikki Cross was not injured. Either way, it was just a mess. It was just an absolute mess, and look, I've made my opinions very clear on the whole Nikki Ash gimmick that I'm obviously not a fan of. I think they tried it as the Raw Women's Champion, and it obviously was not connecting, and she was getting mixed responses at best. My concern with all of this is I have no idea, to be honest with you, why on earth Rhea Ripley is involved in this. The booking of Rhea Ripley earlier this year was so damaging and so bad, and she came out of that feud with Charlotte Flair not looking like a top superstar. She won at WrestleMania, yes, and people will point to that and go, yeah, but she won at WrestleMania. But what did that do for her? Nothing. And now she's in a weird tag team with someone that's dressing up as a superhero, and it just feels out of character. And once again, feels like something like where they don't really know what they have there. And look, botches happen. I'm not going to dunk on anyone for botches. I'm not that kind of person. It happens. It's live television at the end of the day. Things aren't always going to be perfect, but it's just the booking of Rhea Ripley that I kind of, open my eyes at and go, I'm not really sure about that one. Gable Steveson, of course, is signed with WWE. We have some new details about his contract, his signing process with WWE. Now, Olympic gold medalist Gable Steveson, I don't know where that one came from. Gable Steveson sat down for an episode of the MMA Hour of Ariel Helwani. And he was asked about signing with WWE, etc. He was also asked about will he wrestle in the 2024 Olympics in Paris. He said, just depends how my contract goes. I can't say too much. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. That's a long ways away. It's 3 years, but I'm always ready. It all depends on my obligation to WWE. After this year, I'm 100% with the WWE. And if I re-sign, I'm 100% with them. I'm not the boss of the situation, so I can't say. He was he's still an NCAA athlete at the University of Minnesota. He goes on to reveal whether or not he'll be able to wrestle for WWE while still doing amateur wrestling for Minnesota. He says there is a chance he could compete for WWE between now and March, and that it would be allowed by the rules of the contract he signed. He said, quote, "It is allowed, yep, it could happen. It's likely, very, very likely, but who knows? I don't know what day. It could be Monday Night Raw today. It could be Friday Night SmackDown." Helwani also asked Steveson if he believes he'll be able to skip NXT and go straight to the main roster. Steveson says he thinks there is a significant chance he'll go straight to the main roster, but he also notes he's open to anything. In a recent interview, he had noted that fans may see him sooner than they expect. He said, quote, I think there's a very big chance I might go straight to the main roster and not go to NXT. I was open to anything, but with the way things are going, I think I'm going to jump straight into the main roster, and I know there's a lot to learn, but I'm ready to soak everything in like a sponge and just be ready to go out and put a good show on for the crowd. It's interesting whether or not he would go to NXT. I think the fact that he wouldn't probably speaks volumes to NXT. To be honest with you, I know people like Ronda Rousey didn't go through NXT, and again, she's a big star, and maybe it's the same for Gable Steveson. But I think that if you had your system in place, everyone would follow that system, and nobody would be exempt from that. But there are obviously obvious exemptions, and I think it speaks volumes for NXT that in the big grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think that's very interesting. Finally, as we mentioned earlier on, WWE has officially announced the 2021 WWE Draft. The 2021 WWE Draft has been confirmed for next month. A promo aired during Raw last night that officially announced the beginning of the draft for the October 1st edition of SmackDown on Fox. The draft will then wrap up for the October 4th episode of Monday Night Raw on the USA Network. The October 1 SmackDown was originally scheduled to take place at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, but was moved to the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore due to Hurricane Ida. The October 4 edition of Monday Night Raw is scheduled to take place at the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. There's no word yet on if the October 4 Raw show will also be the Raw 30th season premiere, but we'll have to wait and see for that. As I mentioned earlier on, it'll be interesting to see who goes where, because I think, as I mentioned earlier, SmackDown's fine. The interesting one is Raw, because Raw is just desperate for a refresh, desperate for something different. What that different looks like, and if it's and it will depend what those rosters look like. I wouldn't be shocked if we come out of the draft and SmackDown's even more stacked than it is now, because it's the A show. But time will tell when it comes to that. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.